Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So we got a bit of break from the Fly Sky videos. We've got the LOSI Micro B or LOSI, depending where you come from in the world. I know a lot of people don't like how I pronounce it, but it's a 1/24 scale full RTR, and this is literally a shrunken race buggy. And I think there's going to be quite a lot of interest in these things. Don't need as much space to build a track, and yeah. Looking around, there's already a lot of third-party support for these. Not entirely sure if there's a good reason to swap a lot of the plastic bits out for aluminium. Usually on small-scale cars, if you start putting a lot of heavier aluminium on, you tend to break more bits than you would if you left them as plastic. But this is just a unboxing and first look of it. First off, I'd like to give a big shout out to Dave and the crew at RD Models Chesterfield. Link will be in the description below where I got this from. And he's sorted us out a cracking deal on this one. And other than that, let's bring him for a close-up look and see what we get with this thing. So we got the little Micro B in its box. I'm not really sure of what they were thinking with this. So we've got a clear windrock box. But yet on the end of the box we've got a colour and a tick. Not really sure why you need it when you can see what RC's in the box anyway. See if there's any information on here. It's not a great deal of stuff. We got Proline racing wheels and tyres, 65 turn brush motor, fully proportional, oil filled shocks, which is nice to see. I think the ESC and receiver is all in one, which if you want to change your transmitter, you're going to be messing around changing the ESC and receiver over. But it'll be interesting to see if we've got standard plugs for servo and things like that. So let's get this thing open. Not really sure how good this thing is. The STL transmitters have been pretty garbage in the past. I'm hoping that this hasn't got the horrendous delay of the earlier STL models. I was a big fan of the Spectrum gear when it first come out, but the later stuff, not really a fan of. We do have a control for the throttle, so we can set 50, 75 and 100. Steering reverse maybe. Just a switch, so I'm guessing that's reverse. Then on the front, so we have got steering rate, and then I'm guessing that one is steering trim. It's really difficult to see the actual writing on this. So we've got status light and it just says ST, so I'm guessing that's the trim. So looks like reverse servo for steering's on back, steering trim and steering dual rate. So nice to see we got a bit of functionality. Not a bad foam on the actual wheel, and the throttle, it's got a good bit of resistance on it really. So for one of the lower end transmitters, doesn't really feel too bad. So moving on, we have one of the little USB chargers. Now the best advice I can give anybody is, unless you absolutely have to, throw this damn thing in the bin. They are absolutely useless at charging the batteries. They don't balance properly. And most of the complaints you see about people with any of these smaller RCs that come with these things is the battery shows as charged. You put it in the RC, it's flat. You put it back on, it shows as charged. And it's basically because these damn things don't balance charge properly at all. They're absolutely horrendous. If you really got no choice, you can use it. Other than that, do yourself a big favour and just bin this damn thing, because they're absolute garbage. So going a bit further, we've got as warranty that I think pretty much if anything goes wrong with this, they'll just say you're on your own. You've got an instruction manual, so it is nice that they do give full manual. It does give you a full description of what everything does on transmitter, how to remove your body and your batteries. There is some useful stuff in here, quite a thick manual, quite a lot of languages, There's no tear down of the RC, although it does advise you on how you can clean your shocks. It does tell you how to power on and power off the vehicle, and it does tell you how to use that goddamn awful charger. One thing that is definitely much appreciated, we do get the AA batteries. So we do get the 4 AA's for the actual transmitter. It is a bit awkward to see again, but positive is the one closest to the front, negatives at the back. So you want to stick the batteries in, positive side up to the front of the transmitter, negative side up to the back, and then we've got the power button on the back, so we can press and hold that and it'll come on, press and hold it, it'll turn it off. So we do get the standard wheel wrench, and you do get a couple of these tiny little Allen keys that may be really useful, especially if you haven't already got a tiny Allen key set. We get a LOSI or LOSI sticker, so quite nice for the toolbox or tool bag. And then we come to the actual RC itself, and we just got a few zip ties, so don't try and grab it straight out the box. We're definitely going to have to cut these off. And there we have one of the cutest little RC cars that I've unboxed in a long time. We got fully working suspension, although it does kind of feel like they're full of air. The back ones do feel a lot better, so I think the front ones definitely feel like they got a lot of air in them, which RTRs, it's about par for course. We got a clear wing, and you can see on this one I've gone for the silver body. We do have a fully functional diff in the rear, which does feel quite nice. So we got metal dog bones, no universal joints, but metal dog bones on the back, full bearings on the wheels, so they don't feel too bad at all. The tyres do feel extremely grippy, and it does feel like the stock oil setting looks pretty good, and you're going to be able to jump quite high for such a small RC, and it lands pretty planted. So as body is held on by Velcro, and I think there's a few companies done some adapters, but basically the front sticks under the shock mount and the back is Velcroed on. Personally, I like this approach, and I use that on me 1/10 racing. I've just got Velcro outside, so no body clips. Then maybe they could have done a bit more with wiring, but we have a tiny little receiver, an ESC. We've got our little LiPo sat in the bottom, so I think if you pull back on this lever, you should be able to move that lever up, and that should get our battery out. So we've got a tiny 350 milliamp hour battery, but there does look quite a lot of room in here, so I don't think finding other batteries to fit would be a problem. And if we look at this, so we've got a standard 3-pin on a servo, so it does mean it's definitely a possibility to upgrade the servo. That's on the cards. We got the same type of powered plug as I believe the SCX24 and that use, so quite easily available if you do need to get a different battery. We've got the ferrite choke on the motor to stop interference getting back to the little ESC and built-in receiver. And I definitely appreciate the fact, although it's not the tidiest way, I do appreciate the fact we've got a standard 3-wired servo running as steering. The servo saver design certainly looks a lot better than what I've seen on the Mini T 2.0, where I had to put a zip tie around just to stop it sort of opening up constantly. It did sort out the steering on the Mini T 2.0, but this really doesn't need it. So as links are non-adjustable, but to be totally honest, it does look set up pretty good out of the box anyway. It is fascinating how detailed this is. We do have what looks to be an aluminium chassis and then a plastic upkick on the front. We got really tiny screws into the hubs and everything. Interesting that they don't give any way to sort of adjust the preload on the springs. I thought there might have been sort of some spacers attached, but again, it does feel like the suspension is set up pretty good on it anyway. But that is one tiny ESC and receiver. You do have a start button on it, so if we pop the battery back in, bit of a weird design. So we've got a normal balance lead, and then you've got this type of plug. So if you're going to run it off a charger or a normal charger, you should be able to plug the balance lead in, and you'll just have to make a cable up for this, which I've already got because I've got the SCX24 and I've made me send a charge cable for that. I'll just see if I can grab it. So just in case you're wondering how I would advise to charge these, for me, I've just made this little cable, and then that allows me to just plug it into a charger. So you'd plug that into your main plus and minus output on your charger, and then just plug your little balance cable in, just same as you normally would, either into a balance board or directly into charger. So just be aware that this is only 350 milliamp hour. You're going to want to set your charger pretty low so you don't destroy the actual cells. Strangely enough, it doesn't give you a charge rating for it, but I know from most of these tiny little batteries, like with these, so the Reaction 2 battery out of the SCX24, these are also 350 milliamp hour. Good few years between these, but looks like battery technology has shrunk quite a bit. But I know with these it has no problem charging at up to 2 or 3C, and on some of these batteries, like on this one, it does say 3C charge rate. So I don't think you'd have an issue with these, but just bear in mind you don't want to charge it too quickly. But this way of charging will charge both cells properly. The USB ones are notorious for just not balancing the cells correctly and writing off your battery. But let's power this up and see what his little motor sounds like. So it's going to be slightly fiddly getting all the battery and cable through, and then when you come to plug it in, just make sure you've got the ridge facing the top, and we just plug it in like that, and then you just make sure you don't cut any of your cables off as you push that down, and then you've just got to find somewhere to sort of tidy away the plug. It's quite a tight fit, but it is quite a neat setup. So first off, you want to make sure your transmitter's powered on, make sure your dual rate's turned all the way up and your trim's centered, then press and hold the power button. It'll power up, we get a few little beeps. So you've got your throttle forward, brake, and then reverse. That's how it's set up stock. Stock, it looks like a steering set correctly. Looking at this, I would say it's definitely got more left-hand turn than it has right, by quite a bit. So I would say, unless we can change it on the end points, it's probably going to be worth dropping this servo arm off and trying to center the steering more. but I'll certainly visit that in another video. So even if we move as centre on the steering as far right as possible, right hand's really not turning. So that suggests to me that they've not got it centred properly at all. So definitely some work we can do on there. At the box, not a great setup. It also looks like it can't push the steering any further, because that is on the servo saver. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to toy with this. If it's going to be very difficult to show, but the steering rack is pretty much hitting the suspension. So really not sure what they were thinking with this steering design. Not the greatest. So I'm not exactly sure what they were thinking with the geometry, because that alt-way left is hitting the spring and shoving the spring and the arm. Alt-way right doesn't hit the spring, but it does hit the end of the travel, so it's not able to push the steering any further. But yeah, a bit of a weird one. I think for me, I'd probably bring the end point down on the left turn so it's not going too sharp, because it certainly looks like once it gets past like that point, that extra bit looks too far. It does force it to hit the suspension, so we definitely need to look at setting the endpoints up on them. But quite an interesting little RC. There's quite a lot of control there. So for a stock transmitter, it doesn't actually feel too bad. And it certainly feels a lot better than the delay on the earlier versions of these. And if we try and get it all in the same shot, it certainly doesn't feel like there's a huge delay. So yeah, definitely done a better job of this STL2. I think my first sort of experience of the STL transmitters being really bad was on one of the early Sentons, and it was literally so bad it felt like, rather than you actually driving the RC, it felt like you was asking a friend that's holding the controller to put the inputs in. It was absolutely undrivable. Certainly not the case with this. The diff feels nice and smooth, it feels nice and quiet. Doesn't seem like there's any issues with binding or anything. So I think the only issue I can see out the box is definitely needs the steering setting up, but I will cover that in another video. Hopefully Dave and the crew that run RC Complex are hoping to get a little track set up and sort of a racing series for these, racing straight stock out the box, which would be fascinating to do, and I think it's a really good way of getting people into RC. Especially into RC racing. So hopefully as soon as they get the details for that finalised, I'll be able to nip down and get a full running video of this. Just looking at it, we do have some spaces on the rear. I've just noticed them. They are tiny, but we do have 2 spaces, one on each side at rear. So you've definitely got some preload to mess about with. But as I say, the out the box suspension, although definitely sounds like there's some air in them front, but to say that's fully loaded with battery does actually feel quite nice. Yeah, I think I'm quite impressed with this. Just a bit weird with the steering, and from looking at it, it certainly just looks like it's oversteering left, because it's moving the right shock and the right suspension. I think if it actually did stop at the same point as the left one, it'd probably be a lot more even and work a bit better. But that's something we can have a look at. Bearing in mind the entire setup car battery charger. Although personally I wouldn't use the charger any more than you absolutely have to. It does come with it and you can use it. Just keep an eye on it. It's really handy if you've got a battery checker just to make sure it is charging both cells. The other thing on these, if you are going to leave it, power off the transmitter, power off your RC, and if you are going to leave this for any amount of time, just remember you've got a tiny little LiPo and there is a slight current drain on these even when they're off. So just remember to unplug your battery. So you just need to make sure it's fine to leave it in the RC, just don't leave your battery plugged into your actual receiver, because over time it will drain this little tiny battery down and then no charger will charge it back up and you'll be looking for a new battery. Just curious now to see if we just pop this battery out, because we do seem to have quite a bit of space in here, so I'm not sure if you could kind of modify it to get one of these reaction batteries in. Probably going to be a little bit too tight on the body shell, but technically it would power it. It has got a bit of excess on there you could shave off, but certainly not going to get one of the 450 Gens Ace in there. I think that's just asking a bit too much. Width wise, maybe, but I'm sure there is plenty of other options out there, and you can always buy another of these little tiny things. These battery cables, battery plugs, pretty easy to get hold of, and if you've got a little crimp tool they're pretty easy to fit. So even if you can't get a battery with that lead on, you should be able to get the plugs, so that shouldn't be a problem. And as I say, with the servo being standard 3-wire, should be able to replace the servo as well. But yeah, interesting little RC. As I said, this was just a quick unbox and a quick look at it, and I just wanted to investigate the weirdness with the steering that quite a few people have noticed. I've seen a few people cutting this ferrite ring out. It is there to stop interference, so if you do cut it out and then you start getting range issues, don't be surprised. These little brushed motors, although it has got a little cap on the back to try and cut down on sort of interference from the sparking, brushed motors can cause quite a lot of interference, especially for the tiny antenna, little 2.4 gig receiver and ESCs. So if you really don't have to, don't take these ferrites out. They will stop you getting weird issues. But yeah, quite a nice tidy little RC. A little bit fiddly to put the body on, but nothing too bad. You just got to juggle the wires around a little. But yeah, overall, not a bad little RC. Be interesting to get this one to track, give it a run around, put it through its paces, see if we find any inherent flaws with it, and look forward to having a play with this steering and see if we can yeah, get it so it's actually steering properly, rather than, I don't understand how you manage to design a car that turns 50% more one way than what it does the other. If you do pull the steering across manually, you can sort of get the movement on it. So it's definitely something to do with how they've got the steering centered, and with it being non-adjustable links, it's not like we've got the option to make it up on that. But overall, not a bad little attempt. Bearing in mind these are only around £100 in UK, and I think sort of bang for the buck for around £100 for a full RTR, including the batteries for transmitter, a few little tools. Even if it does come with an awfully bad USB charger, at least you've got the option of just buy it, take it out box and run it. But yeah, that's just a quick first look unboxing and just a few of my initial thoughts on the little LOSI Micro B. So let's wrap this one up. So there we have it. Big shout out to Dave and the crew at RD Models Chesterfield for sorting us a deal out on this one. Link will be in the description below. Little LOSI Micro B little race buggy. Quite an interesting thing. I wouldn't advise driving around too much on normal carpet in the house if you've got pets, cause yeah, from experience, kind of clogs everything up. So definitely want to hoover up before you use it. And hopefully, as I say, we'll get a chance to run it at a proper track soon at RC Complex that Dave and a few other guys run. So yeah, thanks for watching WTF Rc Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.